Друзья, всем привет! Вы на канале Сергея Ауслендера.
Friends, hello everyone. You're on Sergey Auslender's channel. Today we have an unusual guest and an equally unusual conversation. At first glance, it may seem unrelated to the usual topics of our channel, but if you listen to the end, you'll understand. We'll be talking about issues that are directly related to the security and viability of the State of Israel. Our guest is Yuriy Dedov-Goldman, an economist, deep-sea captain, and the author of the Navigable Canal in Israel project. Yuri is the originator of the idea to build a navigable canal that would connect the Red Sea with the Mediterranean through the territory of Israel. Did I introduce you correctly, Yuri?
Hi, yes, that's absolutely correct. Good evening. I'm glad to be on your show. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for agreeing and finding the time. Tell me, Yuri, there was a man here, Yossi Langotsky. For a long time, people considered him a local eccentric, who was for some reason searching for gas and oil in the sea. Yossi Langotsky was a geologist who claimed that there were significant reserves of oil and gas in Israel. Everyone just laughed, because everyone knew that there was none of that in Israel. But it turned out he was right, and he went down in history. One of the gas fields, I don't remember the exact name, was named after his daughter. He was granted that right in recognition of his contribution. So, as you can see, he was not crazy at all. So, I'm curious. Have people ever called you the town madman because of your project? Or do they still call you that?
Before I answer your question, please tell me, in what year exactly was the gas discovered? I'm not sure of the date.
You know, if I'm not mistaken, active development began somewhere in the late 2000s, early 2010. But his research started earlier. His main idea was that one should search not on land, but in the sea, on the continental shelf. And it was there that he found the deposits.
Seryoja, I came to Israel in 1999, and already by the end of that same year, I flew in May. By the way, another anniversary is coming up soon. And by then, my first article had already been published. In it, I wrote that all of Israel's wealth lies in the sea, not just hidden somewhere, but specifically in the sea. And that's where one should search. I claim that in the depths of the sea, there are both gas and oil, as well as many other resources, including, for example, valuable commercial species for the food industry.
Well, fish, that's what it's called, right?
Yes. Initially, the article was published on the website The World of Zeev Freeman, so it's easy to verify. So it turns out I'm not the only town madman. I even wanted to meet with Andrey Makarevich to say, in your song about the one who will come and do everything the wrong way, that's about me.
Exactly. And that brings me to a question. How did the idea of building a navigable canal in Israel even come to you in the first place? That's number one. And number two, why do we need it if the Suez Canal already exists?
Ну смотри, с детства нас учили так, чтобы отгадывать загадки. Понимаешь, я учился в замечательной школе.
Look, since childhood, we were taught to solve riddles. I studied at an excellent school. When I first came to Israel, it was either in 1996 or 1998. I don't remember exactly. I went out to the seashore and asked myself, where are the ships? And when I made Aliyah in 1999, that question became fundamental for me. What would I do here? I decided I would develop maritime business sectors. It just couldn't be that in a country full of such intelligent people. No one understood that the sea is a major source of income. I started by going to the Knesset and pestering members of parliament. The first ones I ran into were Yuri Stern, now deceased, and Misha Noodleman. Misha took me seriously and really helped. He took me to Haifa, to the Naval Officers Union. I asked them, show me, tell me how our maritime transport is organized and why there are so few ships. But I didn't hear anything concrete. They talked about tens of millions of tons, but when I asked for exact figures, everything became vague. So I began working with Noodleman on a draft law to separate maritime transport from the Ministry of Transport and to create a separate Ministry of the Merchant Fleet, because in the future, the main revenues should come from maritime sectors. So you could say I didn't sit idle for a single day. From the very first days I started working, I was haunted by the thought, what is the riddle of this country? If there are no mineral resources here, then God must have had something in mind. And I was certain that something was right under our noses. We just needed to figure it out. At a certain point, I realized that Israel's main resource is not its underground reserves, but its geographic location. The land of Israel, that is our resource.
Если зрители меня правильно поймут, я метался с первого дня, ища разгадку. А в чем она? Ведь Господь не просто так нам заповедовал землю, в которой ничего на поверхности нет. И тогда я понял, что главным ресурсом этой страны есть сама земля Израиля, ее расположение. Я понятно выражаюсь, надеюсь?
Да, более чем. Скажи мне, пожалуйста.
Yes, more than that.
Всё-таки,
Tell me, please, still, what is the essence of your idea? Let's get down to specifics. From where to where and how? 3 questions.
Куда и как? Вот ответь мне на 3 этих вопроса.
Я боюсь, чтобы вот идея местного сумасшедшего не притворилась в жизнь натурально после нашего интервью. А раз Боженька задал загадку, я метался с разгадкой. В чем же разгадка? И раз у нас вообще ничего нет, меня это как-то вот выбесивало, и я думал, как же сделать так, чтобы...
I'm afraid that after our interview, the idea of the town madman might suddenly start becoming reality. If God posed a riddle, I couldn't rest until I found the answer. It infuriated me that in such a country, there was nothing. I thought, reflected, searched for the answer, and suddenly it hit me. But we have the same geography as Egypt, and if no one thought of digging a navigable canal, then only one thing was in the way, a small mountain ridge. I sat down, opened a map, and started studying the terrain. And it turned out, if you choose the section with the lowest elevation, around 500 meters, you could connect the Mediterranean Sea with the Red Sea. And not like in Egypt, where they dig in sand, but through dense, stable ground, clay, loam, stone. And that's it. The problem is solved. We make the canal beds solid and durable for centuries to come. Not like the Egyptians, who have been struggling with the crumbling sands of the Suez Canal for 160 years now. We build the canal once and for all. It will be built in such a way that it can accommodate any ships. Because today it's known, no larger ships are being built anymore. The maximum draft of a vessel is 35 meters. That means if we dig to a depth of 50 meters, all existing ships will be able to pass through. Am I explaining it clearly?
Самое крупное судно имеет осадку 35 метров. Значит, если мы роем 50 метров минимум, то мы пропускаем через свой канал все суда, которые есть на земном шаре. Я понятно объясняю?
Более чем, кстати, да, любопытно. А как он должен проходить? Вот у нас Красное море — это город Эйлат. Вот я там буквально сейчас накануне был, у меня была встреча там с подписчиками.
More
Это
than
наш
clearly.
самый южный город.
By the way, here's something curious. How exactly should the canal be laid out? We have the Red Sea, the city of Eilat. I was just there, meeting with subscribers. It's our southernmost port. And on the Mediterranean Sea, we have Ashdod, and the coastline stretches from Gaza to Rosh Hanikra, the entire shoreline. So where should the canal exit be? Looking at the map behind you? Yes, don't lower it. We'll show it later. You can see that the canal runs along the Jordanian border to the Dead Sea, and from there, it goes up. How is this arranged technically?
Почему я так нарисовал?
Tell us.
Потому что там естественная впадина, там не надо рыть, там идет чисто экономический интерес докопаться, дойти до этой впадины мертвого.
Why did I draw the route exactly this way? Because this section contains a natural depression. There's hardly any digging required. All that's needed is to reach the lowland of the Dead Sea and build a dam. As a result, we dig the canal, let's say, from Ashkelon. And if, as we hope, Gaza is liberated, the route can be shortened by starting farther south. From there, It's simple. Water fills this depression on its own. We reach sea level, and the canal becomes gravity-fed, connecting the two seas naturally. To reassure people, I'll say, the Red Sea is slightly higher than the Mediterranean. This is due to gravity, tides, and other natural factors. Therefore, the canal will have a slight current, like in the Suez Canal, approximately half a nautical knot, that is about 0.5 to 0.7 kilometers per hour. Roughly like the current in the Volga River, slow and calm. The canal will resemble a wide river with the same gentle flow. A vast water basin will form in this depression, where ships of any class will be able to maneuver freely. The largest ships are about 360 to 400 meters long, with a draft of up to 35 meters and a width of up to 60 meters. And we ourselves shape the canal's profile however we want.
То есть все суда мира могут идти по нашему каналу. Мы сами делаем тот профиль, который считаем нужным.
Then there's a counter question, which I'm sure you've been asked more than once. What's wrong with the Suez Canal? Why should ships go through our canal and not the Suez?
Его мне постоянно задают, и я говорю, ребята, просто зайдите, погуглите и посмотрите, что происходит с Суэцким каналом. Его когда-то построили, в самые лучшие времена у него была глубина канала 28 метров. Сегодня 13.
Он заиливается или как?
Он постоянно...
Of course, they ask. I get asked this question all the time. And I say, just Google what's happening with the Suez Canal. It was built a long time ago. At its best, its depth was 28 meters. Today, it's only 13. It's silting up because it was laid through sandy soil. It passes through 3 salt lakes, and those are gradually silting up as well. 5 years ago, the Egyptians announced that they were opening a new Suez Canal. But in reality, they just dug a couple of parallel channels and connected them with straits. But digging in sand is like digging in a sandbox. Everything silts up again, everything settles. I always say, look at that, and that's enough. Enough watching them. In all these years, the canal has brought Egypt billions, but they still haven't done anything to reinforce its bed. Today, we just need to build our own modern canal, and the whole world will applaud. And our prime minister, by supporting the project after the Abraham Accords, could, just like Trump, dance with sabers alongside Arabs and oil sheikhs. Tankers over 150,000 tons, and that's the backbone of the global oil fleet, are currently forced to go around Africa. But they would gladly use our canal. What's more, they'd be ready to finance it. If only our government finally understands, this project is of vital importance.
Они от 300 тысяч и выше. Они все ходят вокруг Африки. Да, они с радостью побегут. Они будут основными спонсорами этого строительства, если наше правительство наконец-то дойдет до того, чтобы утвердить этот проект.
Tell me, have you roughly estimated the cost of constructing this canal? Even just in broad strokes. The general order of magnitude? Seryoja? Well, this is a commercial idea, as you understand. And yes, I've roughly estimated the cost. I estimated the cost based on the volume of soil excavation. I calculated how much the excavation itself would cost and added approximate expenses for equipment and labor. Of course, all of this would have to be recalculated by professional scientists in institutes. My estimates, from $360 to $600 billion. It all depends on what equipment will be used, what blasting and drilling methods are applicable, and how precisely the canal bed will be laid out. It also involves geological surveys. We need to understand exactly where the terrain is most suitable. I sketched it out like Peter the Great. Here, the elevation is small, so we go this way. Where there's a depression, the costs are minimal there. I simply took a map, marked the key sections, calculated by elevation and excavation volume. But of course, these are very preliminary, rough estimates. Let's say approximately from 360 to 600 billion.
Well, I see. The range is significant, but that's understandable. Such calculations are done by entire institutes, entire consortia. There are hundreds of specialists, powerful computer models.
Of course, in Seryoja, According to international standards, the cost of design is approximately 10% of the total project costs. So if we're talking about an amount of 360 to 600 billion, then just the design and survey work would cost around $36 billion. That's a task for a full-scale institute, at the very least.
Ну, понятно, то есть это большие бюджеты.
Yeah, sure, that makes sense. These are colossal budgets. And how do you assess the economic impact? Not in terms of profit, but rather, how quickly could the canal pay for itself?
Быстро он может окупиться, скажем так.
Такой канал, во-первых, строится быстро, потому что сегодняшняя техника это уже не то, что с кирками и лопатами. Вот тут такая проходческая техника, которая позволяет двигаться и двигаться очень быстро. Я думаю, что в течение 5 лет такой канал можно освоить. И запустить...
First of all, the construction can proceed quite quickly. Modern tunneling and excavation equipment, it's not pickaxes and shovels anymore. With it, you can move at a high pace. I believe that within 5 years, the canal can be built and already put into operation. That would be the first and main phase. And after that, everything depends on traffic. According to my estimates, our canal would significantly surpass the Suez in terms of throughput. If the Suez Canal handles around 30,000 vessels per year, we can safely multiply that number by 5. At its peak, the Suez generated up to $9 billion per year. Our canal would be multiple times more profitable. I estimate the throughput capacity at up to 100,000 vessels per year. And not just any vessels, but supertankers, with tonnage from 150,000 tons and up. We are deliberately building for large tonnage ships. Let the Suez keep the small and medium vessels. And that's not criticism. It's a rational division. We won't compete for their traffic.
150 и выше. Это я говорю сразу, что мы будем эти корабли, чтобы Египет не возникал, потому что тут же возникнут споры, возникнут международные натяжения отношений. Так мы можем сразу ему подготовить ответ. Мы такие мелкие суда, как вы, пропускать у себя не будем. Это остается ваше.
Вот, я как раз ты меня опередил. Я хотел спросить, а как проблема с
There.
Египтом будет решаться?
You just got ahead of my next question. How do you plan to deal with Egypt? They'll definitely oppose this, but it seems you've already answered. We can just split the traffic. Small vessels through Suez, supertankers through the Israeli Canal.
Которые выходят там из Персидского залива, заходят через Баб-эль-Мандеб в Красное море и идут, соответственно, к нам через Эйлат.
Exactly. Let them continue collecting money from the smaller ships. No one is encroaching on that. But as for the supertankers coming out of the Persian Gulf, passing through the Bab el-Mandeb and heading onward, they will choose our route. And that's only logical. By the way, there's another important issue. There are limitations on ship dimensions due to the Panama Canal. According to international convention, shipyards were restricted in ship size so they could pass through Panama. That's a distorted, cut-down fleet. But we are offering a different approach. We're building a canal with such dimensional reserve that even ships which haven't been built yet could pass through it. We're not limiting the future, we're designing it.
Да, я помню, у американцев была история по ограничению...
Yes, I remember. Before World War II, the Americans also had a limit on the tonnage of battleships, specifically so they could pass through the Panama Canal.
Такая тема, да, что это повлияло на судостроение во всем мире, оказывается.
This is actually a very curious story. It turns out the Panama Canal influenced shipbuilding all over the world. There's what's called the Panama Canal Certificate, or as it's also known, the Panama Canal Mark. On every ship built anywhere in the world, there is a welded marking on the hull, the maximum dimensions that allow it to pass through the Panama Canal. All shipyards around the globe have been tied to this narrow bottleneck. The canal was built a long time ago, without regard for future increases in tonnage. And since then, ships have been constructed long and narrow, literally like sausages, just so they could fit through Panama.
Понятно. Я хотел сказать, что осталась только одна проблема, это хуситы, которые нам очень сильно попортили крови и с Эйладским портом, и с...
I see. I wanted to say there's still one serious problem, the Houthis. They've seriously complicated the situation, especially for the port of Eilat. Both we and the Egyptians have suffered. Somehow the Bab el-Mandeb Strait needs to be unblocked so ships can pass through freely. But in my opinion, this issue is solvable. The US Navy, for example, is already addressing it. So I think this matter will be resolved. I just remembered something important I didn't clarify with you. You said the time frame is 5 years, so in principle, we could already start operations?
Это же, дикое количество рабочих мест, мне кажется.
Это не только это, Сереж, это не только это. Дикое количество рабочих мест на самом строительстве канала, но мы еще не подошли ко второй части.
Так, давай, излагай.
Ты можешь себе представить, что вот мы, ботаники, люди с мозгами, признанные Господом?
Of course. And this is a colossal amount of work that will involve people, companies, the entire regional economy. It's an enormous number of jobs. And not just in the construction of the canal itself. We haven't even gotten to the second phase yet. Look, we nerds, a people of intellect, chosen by God, will be the ones allowing the goods of the world to pass through us. And what? We're not supposed to take advantage of this opportunity? The canal will stretch 252 kilometers through a territory that needs development. We already have a ministry for the development of the Negev, and honestly, I don't understand what it's doing. Ministers, please. Along the entire canal, we can build fjords, bays, coves with industrial zones. And that will immediately bring additional income to the treasury. We can directly offer oil transporters. Why ship raw materials thousands of miles? Refine them here. Build a refinery here and ship out finished gasoline, diesel, wax, and so on. Bringing in cotton? Build a processing plant here. Transporting food? No need to ship raw goods. Produce everything right here. Now imagine, the goods of the entire world pass through Israel, and we build production chains around that. Moreover, a water artery will pass through the Negev. And where there's water, there's life. Look at any island. Vegetation grows right up to the salt water. Greenery appears, nature comes alive. And along the canal, we can build farming operations, install compact desalination units, irrigate, water, cultivate, and suddenly, the Negev turns into a real oasis. Thousands upon thousands of jobs. And if the government also remembers the economy, lowers taxes, makes the country attractive for investment, can you imagine what would happen? You're one of those journalists I sincerely respect. And sometimes I literally applaud when listening to your commentary. No flattery. God grant us more experts like you.
Я смотрю с большим уважением и очень часто даже срываюсь, хлопая в ладоши после твоих экспертных оценок. Это правда, это без всякой лести. Дай Бог нам побольше таких специалистов.
Спасибо, Юр, большое. Давай вернемся все-таки к каналу.
Я тебя похвалил за что? Что ты представишь. Я не задаю вопрос.
Thank you, Yuri, but let's still return to the topic of the canal. You just praised me. But I hadn't even asked a question. I merely said, it's quite feasible. You're right, that's more like the second or even third stage. But you know, the first thing I thought when you brought up this topic was, what nonsense? What canal?
Seryoja, dozens of journalists, dozens of well-known bloggers have told me, Yura, we honestly don't understand what you're talking about. And I would reply, let's talk, and you'll understand. But you're one of the few who from the very beginning said, we will definitely return to this topic. Don't think that was just a formal brush-off. And you really did come back to it.
Вот, так в этом и смысл, чтобы понять, нужно выслушать человека, его аргументы.
Exactly, yes, that's the whole point. To understand an idea, you have to listen to the person, to their arguments. You laid them out for me, and based on that, I can say, the project is entirely realistic. Whether it will be implemented or not, we don't know, and we won't make predictions. But overall, after our conversation, it seems to me a very workable, sound idea. I suppose in its time, the Suez Canal was also seen as the fantasy of town lunatics.
Как это перекопать материк поперек? Перекопали, тут прокопали. Все нормально.
Я на сайте Исраканал, где изложено очень много информации про этот проект. Ну, вернее, вся информация, которую я выдал на гора, она изложена на
I have a website, israkanal.com. where all the information about the project is published. There, by the way, you can find a detailed history of the construction of the Suez Canal, as well as materials about the Panama Canal. The site, although slightly outdated in design, is fully functional, with numbers, facts. It's a good starting point. In addition, there's a Facebook group called Israeli Navigable Canal. I recommend that too. There's a lot of additional information there. Interestingly, I myself had never heard of a similar idea before. But once I started promoting my project, reaching out, persuading, I suddenly learned, in the 1960s, a canal was indeed discussed in Israel, but it was supposed to be a lock canal. They didn't want to dig through the mountains and planned to compensate for elevation changes with locks, like in the river canals of Russia or in Panama. A ship enters a lock, the water level rises, it moves forward. Lock after lock, lock after lock. But such a canal would never be able to compete with the Suez. It would have meant billions wasted and ultimately a permanent headache. A lock canal is a dead end. It can never compete with a gravity-fed canal. What's needed is a flow through navigable canal, connecting the seas naturally, without artificial lifts, delays, or restrictions.
Всю оставшуюся жизнь. Ни в коем случае. Только судоходный канал проточный. Никаких. Сейчас подожди, если только...
By the way, if Trump does manage to regain control over the Panama Canal, maybe my proposal will come in handy. I sent the project there, a proposal to build a new gravity-fed navigable canal right next to it, and to stop wasting money on the existing bottleneck. Because a gravity-fed canal is a different scale, different dimensions, different throughput capacity. Boris Pincus said he passed my materials on to Trump's office. So who knows? Maybe I'll help America too.
Это приглашение в офис президента, и там его будут рассматривать. Чем черт не шутит, может, я и Америка.
Why not? Life is full of strange turns, let's be honest. The very idea of creating the state of Israel once seemed insane to many. And yet here we are, living in a beautiful, strong, flourishing country.
Сережа, ну что я обязательно...
Seryoja. And one more thing I absolutely must say, something that truly outrages me. Can you imagine? The canal profile is a minimum of 500 meters wide and 50 meters deep, and it's filled with seawater. Now just think, if back in 2014, we had started digging such pits on the Gaza-Israel border, we would have long since put an end to the terrorist tunnels. Every year, when the tunnels interfered with our lives, I wrote letters, I reached out. I hoped that someone, anyone, would pass my proposals to the proper authorities. I suggested, on the northern border of Gaza, in the Philadelphia corridor area, begin digging the canal profile. While we removed the soil, 15 to 20 meters down to sea level, we would have hit dozens, maybe hundreds of tunnels. Then we could act. The military comes in with dogs, sappers, whatever's needed, and we keep digging. We reach zero elevation, then go down another 50 meters, and there it is, the profile of the future canal. Then all that's left is to fill it with seawater, by gravity. The water will seep into the sand, flood the tunnels. That's it. No more terrorist tunnels, ever. Not into Egypt, not out of Egypt, not into Israel. And after all, fighting the tunnels is one of our most urgent tasks.
Никогда больше не будет никаких террористических туннелей.
Но имеется в виду туннели, которые ведут из Газы в Египет и в обратную сторону.
А нам что, не надо...
Well, no argument there. That idea has been discussed. I've heard about it.
Мне тоже слышал, да, я слышал про нее.
И на северной границе...
And on the northern border, on the Israeli side, the same thing. We get rid of the tunnels once and for all. At the same time, we get practice digging the canal. Maybe it will eventually start from there. I've also heard that nowadays they're using all sorts of trendy technologies. Sensors, ground cavity analysis, and so on.
Это миллиарды.
That's billions. But the issue isn't even the amount. All of it is inefficient and works only intermittently. But the good old trench, especially when shaped as the profile of a navigable canal, works perfectly.
Пару попыток, притащили насосы и стали качать насосами, затапливать туннели. Но я так и не смог достучаться.
So what did they do? A couple of times they brought in pumps, tried to inject water into the tunnels, but I was never able to get through to them. Guys, you can see the diameter of the pipe. Just calculate how much volume you're actually pushing through it. How can you flood 700 kilometers of tunnels with a single little pipe? How much diesel will you burn? How much electricity will you consume? Why waste time on nonsense? If they had started digging at the very beginning of the war. I live in Ashkelon. I hear explosions every day. I try to calm myself. Yura, relax. They're probably digging a pit. What pit? Every day another terrorist pops up.
Спокойно, они роют котлован. Какой нахрен котлован? Каждый день выскакивают террористы.
Понятно, это уже...
Yes, that's already a cry from the heart. Let's not go too deep into that now, but we'll have a separate conversation about it sometime. Yura, thank you so much. I really liked your idea. I'm not an expert in hydrogeology or maritime navigation, but everything you said sounds logical and reasonable. You explain things very clearly, and I hope that will help convince the people who make the decisions.
Перед тем, как попрощаться, я хочу сказать очень важную вещь. Практически сам судоходный канал...
Before we say goodbye, I want to say something very important. If we launch the Navigable Canal project, we will attract enormous investments. These will be the biggest players, the wealthiest countries. And these countries will not only have a commercial interest, they will have a vested interest in the canal's security. They will guard it themselves. That means Saudi Arabia, the United States, Europe. And once they invest, we will be guaranteed both security and support. It will be a financial breakthrough. Today, our budget doesn't have enough money for retirees or for the younger generation. Taxes are being raised, instead of launching a project that could bring in billions. And even if someone does steal, there will still be enough money for everyone. We will become the richest country in the world. There will be enough funds for all the programs we can't even dream of today. Half the world will work on this canal, like at Dubai Airport. Thousands of professions, thousands of jobs. Israel will become one of the strongest financial powers.
Тысячи видов. Мы будем одна из самых мощных финансовых держав мира.
Ну дай бог, Юр.
Well, God willing, Yura. Let's hope everything works out. Thank you so much. Thank you for finding the time. Let's meet again sometime soon. You'll tell us how things are progressing. And we'll talk about other topics as well, especially about the sea and maritime industries. You really know your stuff.
Спасибо тебе большое.
С большим удовольствием, потому что далеко...
With great pleasure, because this is far from the last project. There are others I'm keeping quiet about for now. Thank you.